I watched my sister Vanessa glide into the charity gala wearing my Alexander McQueen gown, the exact midnight blue dress with the hand-embroidered silver constellation pattern that I'd commissioned for tonight. The same dress currently hanging in my closet, untouched. She'd somehow gotten the designer to make an identical copy. But here's what she didn't know: I wasn't wearing it. Instead, I stood by the bar in a deliberately plain black sheath dress from Target, my hair in a simple ponytail, minimal makeup. Around me, the city's elite mingled in their couture and diamonds, and there was Vanessa, absolutely drowning in excessive elegance that now looked completely out of place next to my understated appearance. Her face when she spotted me was worth everything I'd endured in my previous life. "Mara?" Her voice cracked slightly. "What are you wearing?" I smiled and took a sip of my champagne. "Oh, this old thing. I decided to go for something more subtle tonight. You look very formal." The people around us started whispering. In our social circle, being overdressed was almost worse than being underdressed. Vanessa had based her entire ensemble on the assumption that I'd be wearing that gown, that she could once again position herself as my elegant twin, riding my coattails to admiration. Now she just looked desperate and try-hard, glittering alone, while I embodied effortless sophistication in my simplicity. This was just the beginning. You see, 3 months ago, I died. Or rather, the first version of me died at 28 years old, broken and alone in a studio apartment, having lost everything to my sister's machinations. I'd taken a bottle of sleeping pills, unable to bear another day of watching Vanessa live the life she'd stolen from me, piece by piece, choice by choice, opportunity by opportunity. Then I woke up on the morning of my 18th birthday, 10 years in the past, with every memory of what was to come burned into my mind. Let me take you back to how it all began, to the years that shaped the monster my sister became, and the doormat I'd allowed myself to be. Vanessa and I were born 11 months apart. Irish twins, people called us, though we shared only a mother. Her father had been Mom's first husband, a wealthy real estate developer who died in a car accident when Vanessa was 2. My father had been her second husband, a kind literature professor who'd loved Mom desperately and whom she'd divorced when I was 5 because he lacked ambition. Mom had gotten substantial alimony from both marriages, and she'd used that money to launch herself into high society, dragging us along as accessories to her reinvention. But there was a problem. She only had enough affection for one daughter, and she'd chosen Vanessa. The favoritism started early. Vanessa got the bigger bedroom, the nicer clothes, the expensive toys. I got hand-me-downs and indifference. When I complained, Mom would sigh and say, "Vanessa is more sensitive, she needs more support." As if needing love was a character flaw on my part, but the real torment began when I turned 13 and discovered I had a talent for fashion design. I'd started sketching dresses in my notebooks during class, and my art teacher had been so impressed, she'd entered one of my designs in a young artist competition. I'd won second place and a small scholarship to a summer design program, and I was ecstatic. For the first time, I had something that was mine. Something I was good at that had nothing to do with Mom's approval or Vanessa's shadow. That lasted exactly 1 week. Vanessa, seeing the attention I was getting, suddenly declared that she too wanted to be a fashion designer. She'd never shown any interest before, couldn't draw to save her life. But Mom immediately enrolled her in expensive private lessons and bought her a professional-grade drafting table and the finest art supplies money could buy. When I asked if I could have some supplies too, Mom told me I should be grateful for what I had and not be greedy. Over the next 5 years, this pattern repeated itself endlessly. Any interest I developed, any talent I showed, any friend I made, Vanessa would swoop in and take it. She'd copy my sketches and turn them in as her own in her classes. She'd befriend my friends and slowly poison them against me with subtle lies. She'd find out which colleges I was applying to and apply to the same ones. Then convince Mom to write her recommendation letters that painted her as the creative genius of the family. The worst part was that Vanessa had something I didn't: Mom's backing and an unlimited budget. So while I was working part-time at a coffee shop to afford fabric for my designs, Vanessa had access to the best materials, the best connections, the best everything. She'd take my ideas, execute them with better resources, and take all the credit. By the time we were in college, both at Parsons, because of course Vanessa had followed me there, I'd learned to hide my work from her. I'd sketch in secret, keep my portfolio locked away, tell no one about my designs until they were already submitted or shown. It helped a little. I managed to build a small reputation separate from her. Then came the graduation fashion show, the one that would determine which students got internships with major designers. I'd spent 2 years planning my collection, working night shifts to afford the materials, sewing until my fingers bled. It was going to be my moment, my chance to finally prove myself without Vanessa's interference. The night before the show, Vanessa broke into my apartment while I was asleep and stole 3 of my 6 pieces. I woke up to find them gone and Vanessa's door locked, her phone off. I had to scramble to put together replacement pieces in 12 hours. They were nowhere near as good as my originals. At the show, Vanessa presented her collection, which included my stolen designs, to thunderous applause. She won the top prize and an internship with Oscar de la Renta. My hastily assembled collection was called uneven and lacking cohesion. I got nothing. When I confronted her afterwards, she looked at me with those innocent blue eyes and said, "I don't know what you're talking about. Those are my designs. You're just jealous because Mom always said I was more talented." Mom, standing right there, nodded along. "Mara, this obsession with competing with your sister is unhealthy. You should be happy for her success." That was the moment I first realized. They didn't see me as a person. I was just a resource to be mined for Vanessa's benefit. The years after college were more of the same, only worse. I got a job as a junior designer at a small fashion house. Vanessa leveraged her Oscar de la Renta internship into a position at the same company, one level above me. She'd look over my shoulder at my work, take photos of my sketches when I wasn't looking, present my ideas as her own in meetings before I had a chance to share them. I tried to report her. HR said they couldn't prove anything, and anyway, creative collaboration was encouraged at the company. 2 weeks later, I was fired for attitude problems. Vanessa got my position. This happened 3 more times at 3 different companies. Each time, Vanessa would follow me, steal my work, and I'd end up fired or quitting from the stress while she climbed higher. When I was 25, I decided to go independent. I launched my own online boutique, designing and sewing custom pieces. For 6 months, it was wonderful. I was finally free of Vanessa's shadow, building something that was entirely mine. My designs started getting attention on social media. I got featured in a few small fashion blogs. Orders were coming in. Then Vanessa launched her own boutique with an identical name, just with an E at the end instead of an A. She used Mom's money to hire a full team of seamstresses and marketers. She copied my entire aesthetic, my branding, even my product descriptions. Customers got confused, thought my boutique was fake, started leaving bad reviews on my page saying I was trying to rip off the real designer. I couldn't afford to fight her legally. My business collapsed within 4 months, and by 26, I was broken. I'd lost my career, my savings, my reputation. I'd tried dating, but Vanessa would flirt with anyone I showed interest in, usually successfully. I'd tried making friends, but she'd always worm her way in and turn them against me with her lies and charm and endless money. The final straw came on my 28th birthday. I'd been scraping by doing freelance alterations, living in a tiny studio apartment, barely making rent. Vanessa, meanwhile, had launched a full fashion line called Vanessa Reeves Originals, using dozens of designs I'd created over the years, designs she'd photographed or sketched from my portfolios. She was being hailed as the next big American designer. She'd been on the cover of Vogue. That night, she called me. "Mara," she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy, "I just want you to know that I forgive you for being jealous all these years. I know it must be hard watching me succeed while you struggle, but really, you should take some responsibility. If you were talented, you'd have made it too." I hung up, stared at the bottle of sleeping pills on my nightstand, and made a choice I thought was the only one left. Instead, I woke up a decade earlier, gasping in my childhood bedroom, 18 years old again, with everything I knew about the future locked in my mind. At first, I panicked. Then I cried. Then I started planning. I knew exactly what Vanessa would do because she'd already done it. I knew every design she'd steal, every friend she'd turn against me, every opportunity she'd sabotage. More importantly, I knew her patterns, her methods, her weaknesses. And I knew the one thing that drove her more than anything, the need to copy me. She didn't have original ideas of her own. She never had. She was a parasite, and parasites die when their host cuts them off. So I developed a strategy. In this new life, I would become her poison pill. The first few months, I played it safe. I did everything exactly as I'd done before. Let her copy me. Let her think this timeline was the same. I needed her confident and complacent. I enrolled at Parsons again, started designing again, even let her discover a few of my early sketches. But I also started laying groundwork. I befriended people who'd turned against me before, this time making sure to cement those relationships before Vanessa could interfere. I documented everything, every sketch I made with timestamps and witnesses. I joined online design communities under a pseudonym, posting my work and building a secret following. I got a lawyer, a young, hungry one, who owed my late father a favor, and had him start building copyright cases proactively. Most importantly, I started watching Vanessa's patterns, really watching them. I documented every time she copied me, every design she stole, every lie she told. I gathered evidence that would be useful later, but none of that would matter if I couldn't cut her off from her supply, me. That's when I developed the dress down strategy. See, Vanessa's entire identity was built on being the more elegant, more sophisticated, more fashionable sister. She'd spent years positioning herself as the style icon, while painting me as the tragic, frumpy younger sister who couldn't quite measure up. Every magazine profile, every interview, every social media post reinforced this narrative. She'd built her brand on predicting trends, but her secret was simple. She just watched what I was planning to do and did it first with better resources. So I realized, what if I started planning to do deliberately terrible things? The charity gala was my first test. I'd let it slip to Mom, knowing she'd tell Vanessa, that I was planning to wear the Alexander McQueen gown I'd commissioned. I'd even had fake progress photos taken of me at fittings, which I'd accidentally left visible on my phone where Vanessa could see. As predicted, she'd moved heaven and earth to get an identical gown made. She'd probably spent $50,000 or more on it. Then I wore a $60 Target dress and made her look like an overdressed fool. The whispers at the gala were delicious. Did you see Vanessa? So try hard. Mara looked so chic in her simplicity. Natural style. I heard Vanessa spent a fortune on that dress. Imagine trying that hard. Vanessa left early, practically in tears. I stayed until the end, making connections, being praised for my authentic, understated elegance. The next event was even better. I let Vanessa discover my Pinterest board where I'd been planning an all-white outfit for a gallery opening. I even bought an all-white pantsuit and left it hanging visible in my closet when I knew she'd be over. She showed up in head-to-toe white, dress, shoes, bag, jewelry. She looked like an ice queen, perfect and pristine. I wore all black, dark, dramatic, mysterious. The gallery was featuring dark, moody photography, and my outfit perfectly complemented the art while Vanessa looked like she'd shown up at the wrong event. Vanessa seems so out of touch lately, I heard someone say. Did you see how perfectly Mara dressed for the theme? Now that's someone who understands fashion. This continued for months. Every time Vanessa copied my supposed plans, I'd do the opposite and make her look desperate, try hard, or out of touch. Slowly but surely, her reputation as a style icon began to crumble. But I wasn't satisfied with just making her look bad at parties. I wanted to destroy the empire she'd built on my stolen work. That's where phase 2 came in. In my first life, Vanessa had stolen my graduation collection and launched her career. This time, I had different plans for that collection. I let her think everything was the same. I worked on my designs, kept them in the same portfolio, same hiding places. I even recreated the same 6 pieces I'd made before, the ones she'd stolen, down to the last stitch. But I also created a second, secret collection. This one was magnificent, innovative, unlike anything I'd done in my first life. I worked on it at my friend James's apartment, someone Vanessa hadn't managed to corrupt yet because I'd gotten to him first and warned him about her. The pieces in my secret collection played with gender norms, used sustainable materials in innovative ways, incorporated technology. LED threads that changed color, fabrics that responded to movement. It was experimental, bold, and completely original. Meanwhile, the collection I let Vanessa see was good enough to be credible, but subtly flawed. The proportions were slightly off. The color combinations would look great in photos, but strange in person. The construction had built-in weaknesses that wouldn't show until the garments were actually worn. 2 weeks before the graduation show, right on schedule, Vanessa broke into my apartment and stole 3 pieces from my visible collection. I pretended to be devastated, just like before. I made sure people saw me crying, heard me on the phone frantically trying to figure out what to do. Then, 3 days before the show, I submitted my real collection, the secret one. The show organizers were stunned. They actually moved my presentation to the final slot, the most prestigious position. The night of the show arrived. Vanessa went first, smug and confident, presenting her collection, which included my sabotaged pieces. At first, it looked okay. The audience applauded politely. But then the model started moving, interacting, and the flaws became apparent. A seam split open on one dress. The colors that had looked cohesive in photos clashed horribly under the runway lights. A jacket that should have been structured looked limp and shapeless. Vanessa's face went from confident to confused to horrified as she realized something was very, very wrong. The applause was scattered and pitying. I saw Anna Wintrow, the legendary editor sitting in the front row, actually wince. Then came my turn. The lights dimmed. My first model walked out and the entire room gasped. The dress she wore shifted from midnight blue to silver as she moved, the LED threads creating the illusion of liquid starlight. The second model followed in a suit that challenged every gender norm while remaining elegantly wearable. The third, fourth, fifth pieces got stronger. By the time my sixth and final model walked, wearing a gown that seemed to be made of living light, sustainable silk that had been printed with bioluminescent ink I'd developed with a chemistry major, the entire room was on its feet. I won. Not just the top prize, but a special innovation award and a full-ride sponsorship to pursue a master's degree anywhere in the world. Oscar de la Renta himself approached me after the show and offered me an internship. Vanessa got nothing. Worse than nothing, she got pity and suspicion. Weren't those pieces stolen? I heard someone whisper because I'd made sure to plant that seed earlier with carefully timed questions and evidence. Someone should check those designs. They look like Mara's style. The quality was so poor. Did she even make them herself? I watched Vanessa's face crumble as she realized what had happened. She'd stolen pieces I'd designed to fail. She'd based her entire presentation on copying me, and I'd made her copy garbage. But I wasn't done. Not even close. After graduation, instead of taking the Oscar de la Renta internship, I took the master's sponsorship and enrolled at Central St. Martin's in London. I needed to get away from Vanessa's immediate sphere of influence, build my own reputation from scratch, and most importantly, prepare for the endgame. The next 2 years were glorious. Without Vanessa breathing down my neck, I flourished. I won competitions, got featured in European fashion magazines, built a network of legitimate contacts and supporters. I worked with innovation labs on developing new materials and techniques. I collaborated with tech companies on wearable technology. I also kept careful tabs on Vanessa through social media and mom's phone calls. Without my designs to steal, Vanessa was floundering. She'd managed to get a position at a mid-level fashion house based on mom's connections, but her work was consistently uninspired. She was copying trends from other designers, always 6 months too late. She'd launched an Instagram account trying to position herself as a style influencer, but her follower count was stagnant and her engagement was pitiful. Most tellingly, she'd stopped posting her own designs entirely and had pivoted to styling other people's clothes. She'd become exactly what she'd accused me of being, a hanger-on with no original ideas. Mom kept calling me, begging me to help Vanessa, to share my connections, to be a good sister. I politely declined every time. Vanessa needs to learn to stand on her own, I'd say sweetly. You always said I needed to stop relying on family and make my own way. I'm just encouraging her to do the same. The frustration in Mom's voice was music to my ears. Meanwhile, I was building towards something bigger. In my first life, Vanessa had launched her Vanessa Reeves Originals line at age 26, using designs she'd stolen from me over 8 years. That line had been her greatest success, the thing that made her a household name. I knew every single piece in that collection because I designed them. I had the original sketches from my first life, now carefully recreated and dated in this timeline. I had witnesses who could confirm when I'd created each design. I had blog posts and social media timestamps showing my process. So when Vanessa, at age 25 and desperate for a breakthrough, began posting sneak peeks of her upcoming collection, I was ready. The designs she was showing were ones I'd created in my first life between ages 23 and 25. She must have been sitting on photos or sketches she'd stolen back then, thinking she could use them now. Or maybe she'd broken into my old storage unit. Whatever the case, she was making her move. I waited until she'd committed, until she'd gotten investors, signed contracts, booked a runway show, started manufacturing, until there was no way she could back out. Then I struck. I released my own collection, an archival retrospective of my work from the past 7 years. Every single design was time-stamped, documented, and dated. My lawyer sent cease and desist letters to every manufacturer and investor associated with Vanessa's launch. We provided overwhelming evidence that she'd stolen my intellectual property. The fashion world erupted. Major fashion blogs picked up the story. Rising star Vanessa Reeves accused of stealing sister's designs. The evidence I provided was irrefutable. Side-by-side comparisons showed exact copies. My timestamps proved I'd designed everything first. Witnesses came forward confirming they'd seen me working on these pieces years ago. Then the floodgates opened. Other designers Vanessa had worked with started coming forward with their own accusations. Patterns emerged. An entire decade of theft? Vanessa tried to deny it at first, but the evidence was overwhelming. She held a disastrous press conference where she broke down crying, claiming I'd always been jealous of her, that I was fabricating evidence because I couldn't stand her success, but I'd prepared for that too. I released a video I'd secretly filmed in my first life. Well, recreated in this life during a moment when I'd gotten Vanessa drunk and nostalgic. In it, she laughingly admitted to taking my designs over the years, thinking she was confessing to someone who was on her side. Mara's always been too soft to do anything about it, she said on camera, smiling. And anyway, I make her designs better. I have the resources to execute them properly. In a way, I'm doing her a favor. The video went viral. Millions of views in days. Vanessa became a pariah overnight. Her investors pulled out. Her fashion show was canceled. Every company she'd worked with scrambled to distance themselves from her. Her Instagram lost half its followers in a week. Brands she'd been affiliated with terminated their contracts, and the lawsuits began. Not just mine, but from every designer she'd ever stolen from. Copyright infringement, fraud, breach of contract. The legal fees alone would bankrupt her. Mom tried to help, of course. She threw money at lawyers, tried to use her social connections to suppress the story. But the internet had already made its judgment, and Mom's high society friends were more interested in protecting their own reputations than defending a proven thief. I watched it all unfold from my apartment in London, sipping tea and working on my legitimate designs. But there was still one more score to settle. Mom herself. See, in my first life, I'd learned something important about Mom's finances. She'd been living on alimony and trust fund payments for decades, maintaining an expensive lifestyle she couldn't actually afford. She'd been supplementing her income by taking out loans against her house and borrowing against her future trust fund payments. She'd always assumed she could pay it back because Vanessa would be successful and support her. That was the deal. Mom would invest everything in Vanessa's career, and Vanessa would take care of her in old age. Now Vanessa was broke, facing millions in legal judgments, completely unemployable in the fashion industry. And Mom's debts were coming due. I made one more move. Using a shell company and my lawyer's help, I bought up Mom's debts from her various creditors. Technically legal, morally questionable, but deeply satisfying. Then I called in those debts, all at once. Mom couldn't pay. She had to sell the house she'd been so proud of, the house that symbolized her successful climb into high society. She had to auction off her jewelry, her art collection, everything she'd accumulated over decades of social climbing. She called me, crying, begging for help. Mara, please, I'm your mother. You can't let them take everything. Where was this energy when Vanessa was taking everything from me? I asked calmly. When she was stealing my work, my reputation, my entire future? You stood by and watched. You encouraged it. You told me I was jealous and ungrateful. I was wrong, she sobbed. I see that now. Please, I'll do anything. Then admit it, I said. Publicly. Admit that you enabled Vanessa's theft. Admit that you favored her over me my entire life. Admit that you're the reason she became a monster. There was a long silence. I can't, she finally whispered. What would people think? Then you've made your choice, I said and hung up. Mom lost everything. She had to move into a modest apartment in a less fashionable part of the city. Her society friends dropped her. She became exactly what she'd always feared, ordinary and invisible. Vanessa, unable to find work in fashion and facing bankruptcy, had to take a job in retail, ironically selling clothes at a department store. No design work, no creative input, just folding sweaters and dealing with customers. Everything she'd thought she was above. I heard through the grapevine that they blamed me for everything. They told anyone who'd listen that I'd destroyed them out of petty jealousy. But no one believed them anymore. The evidence of Vanessa's theft was too overwhelming, and everyone could see that I'd simply protected my own work. As for me, I returned to New York at age 26 with my master's degree, an impressive portfolio, and a reputation as an innovative designer who'd overcome her family's sabotage. The fashion world loves a survivor story, and mine was compelling. I launched my own line, Mara Reeves Original. Not subtle, but effective. My first collection was the one I'd designed for my secret portfolio in my first life. The pieces that should have been my graduation breakthrough. I'd refined them over the years, made them even better. The critics called it a revelation and the most exciting American debut in a decade. The pieces sold out in days. I got orders from celebrities, features in Vogue and Elle, invitations to show at Fashion Week. Oscar de la Renta called to congratulate me and apologize for not seeing my talent earlier. I hired a full team. Designers, seamstresses, pattern makers. People who appreciate original work and had zero tolerance for theft. We created 3 collections a year, each one pushing boundaries and exploring new techniques. By age 27, I was exactly where Vanessa had been in my first life, successful, celebrated, financially secure. Except I'd earned it with my own work. I bought a beautiful brownstone in Brooklyn, one with a full studio on the top floor. I had a corner office in the garment district. I had employees who respected me and a reputation built on genuine talent. I also had something Vanessa never had. Genuine relationships. Friends who liked me for myself, not for what I could do for them. A boyfriend, Marcus, who I'd met at a gallery opening. An architect who appreciated my work but couldn't care less about the fashion industry drama. Life was good, better than good. It was everything I dreamed of in my first life but never believed I could have. But I still kept tabs on Vanessa. I couldn't help it. Part of me needed to see the full arc of her downfall to make sure she could never hurt me again. She'd moved back in with Mom in that modest apartment. She'd gained weight from stress and depression. Her hair had lost its shine. Her Instagram, which she still maintained, was a sad chronicle of someone trying desperately to reclaim lost glory. She'd post throwback photos from her brief moment of success, adding captions about the good old days and when people appreciated real fashion. Her followers, now down to a few thousand, mostly commented with pity or mockery. Girl, let it go. Aren't you that designer who got caught stealing? How's that retail job going? She'd tried several times to launch comebacks. A Kickstarter for a new collection that raised $200. A YouTube channel about fashion secrets that got 70 views per video. A blog that no one read. Every venture failed because the stain of her theft would never wash away. The internet doesn't forget, and the fashion industry has a long memory. The final nail came 2 years after her exposure, when I was 27 and at the peak of my success. I received an invitation to speak at Parsons' graduation ceremony. The same ceremony where, in my first life, everything had fallen apart. They wanted me to inspire the next generation of designers with my story of perseverance and innovation. I accepted, of course. On the day of the ceremony, I wore a design from my latest collection, a stunning cream suit with subtle gold embroidery that caught the light when I moved. Simple, elegant, entirely my own. I walked onto that stage and saw Vanessa in the audience. She'd come, I later learned, because she'd heard I was speaking and couldn't resist seeing what I'd become. She sat in the back, in a cheap dress from a fast fashion brand, her face hollow and bitter. I gave my speech. I talked about the importance of originality, of staying true to your vision even when others try to tear you down. I talked about how the fashion industry rewards genuine innovation and punishes theft. I talked about building something sustainable rather than taking shortcuts, and I never mentioned Vanessa by name. I didn't have to. Everyone in that room knew the story. They could see the living proof of my words sitting in the back row. Some people think success is about being faster or more connected or more ruthless than everyone else, I said, looking directly at Vanessa. But real success, the kind that lasts, the kind that means something, comes from doing the work, from respecting the craft, from creating something that's genuinely yours. I saw tears running down Vanessa's face. Not tears of remorse, I thought, but tears of rage and self-pity. Even now, she probably thought she was the victim in our story. After the ceremony, several students approached me for advice. I stayed for hours, looking at portfolios, offering guidance, making connections. This was what Vanessa had been supposed to do at her moment of triumph, but she'd been too focused on herself to pay attention to others. As I was leaving, I saw Vanessa waiting by my car. For a moment, I considered ignoring her, but curiosity got the better of me. "What do you want, Vanessa?" She looked at me with such hatred it was almost impressive. "You destroyed me. You know that, right? You deliberately ruined my life." "I protected my work," I said calmly. "Everything that happened to you was the consequence of your own choices." "You planned all of this," she spat. "The way you changed your style, the graduation collection, buying mom's debts. You engineered my downfall. You're not the victim here. You're a manipulator who played mind games for years." I smiled. "You know what's funny, Vanessa? Even now you think this is about me being clever or manipulative. It never occurs to you that the real problem was your complete lack of original talent. I didn't have to be a genius to beat you. I just had to stop letting you steal from me. I made your designs better. I had the vision to. You had nothing," I interrupted. "No vision, no originality, no actual skill. Just an unlimited budget and a willingness to steal. And when I cut you off from your supply, you had nothing left. That's not my fault, that's yours." She lunged at me, actually lunged, hands outstretched like she was going to attack me. My security team, yes, I had security now, stepped in immediately, holding her back. "You're nothing," Vanessa screamed as they restrained her. "You're a fraud. Everything you have should have been mine." "That's the thing you never understood," I said quietly. "It was always mine. You just borrowed it for a while." I got in my car and drove away, leaving her screaming in the parking lot. That was the last time I saw her in person. 3 months later, Vanessa had a complete mental breakdown. She was hospitalized after she'd trashed the department store where she worked, screaming about stolen designs and conspiracies. Mom had her committed to a psychiatric facility for evaluation. I heard about it from James, who'd stayed loosely connected to Mom out of morbid curiosity. "She's claiming you have magic powers or something," he told me. "That you went back in time and changed everything. The doctors think it's a delusional episode brought on by stress and guilt." I said nothing. What could I say? That she was right? That I really had gone back and changed the timeline? No one would believe it, and besides, it didn't matter. This reality was the true one now. Vanessa spent 6 months in treatment. She came out medicated and subdued, all the fight gone out of her. She moved to a different city, Phoenix, I heard, and got a job as an administrative assistant at a dermatology clinic, completely unrelated to fashion. She deleted all her social media accounts. Mom, meanwhile, had become a bitter recluse. She'd applied for a job at a nonprofit and was working as a receptionist, her social climbing days long over. She'd tried to reconcile with me a few times, sending long emails about how she'd been blinded by Vanessa's needs and made mistakes as a mother. I read the emails but never responded. Some wounds were too deep for apologies. As for me, I was living my best life. At 28, the age I'd been when I died in my first timeline, I was at the top of my field. I'd been named to Forbes's 30 Under 30 list. My designs were worn by A-list celebrities at award shows. I'd been commissioned to create custom pieces for 3 different royal families. I'd also started a foundation, Original Designs Matter. It provided legal support and resources for young designers who'd had their work stolen. Every year, we caught and prosecuted dozens of design thieves, protecting new talent from predators like Vanessa. The foundation was perhaps my greatest revenge. Every designer we helped, every thief we exposed was a reminder that I'd turned my trauma into something meaningful. I'd taken the worst thing that ever happened to me and used it to help others. I thought about my first life often, about the Mara who'd given up, who'd swallowed those pills because she couldn't see any other way out. I wished I could tell her that there was another way, that she was stronger than she knew, that her talent was real and valuable and worth fighting for. But I couldn't. That Mara was gone, replaced by this version. Harder, smarter, more ruthless, but also more successful and genuinely happy. Sometimes I wondered if the universe had given me a second chance because I deserved it, or simply because my story wasn't finished yet. I decided it didn't matter. I was here, I was thriving, and I'd taken back everything that was stolen from me. On my 29th birthday, Marcus proposed. We'd been together for 2 years, and he'd become my anchor, my reminder that not everyone in the world was out to exploit me. We planned a small wedding, just close friends, and the family I'd chosen rather than the family I was born into. Mom sent a card. I threw it away without opening it. Vanessa sent nothing, which was somehow more painful for her, I imagined, than any message could have been. The wedding was beautiful. I wore a gown I designed myself. Simple white silk with strategic cutouts and a train that seemed to float behind me. It was understated elegance at its finest, and when I walked down the aisle, I saw Marcus's eyes fill with tears. We honeymooned in Paris, and I took meetings with European designers and suppliers while we were there. Even on vacation, I was building, creating, expanding my empire. When we returned, I found an email from an investigative journalist who was writing a book about design theft in the fashion industry. She wanted to interview me to make my story with Vanessa the centerpiece of a chapter about familial theft and creative betrayal. I agreed. It was time for the full story to be told, for every detail of what Vanessa had done to be documented and preserved. Not for revenge, I'd already gotten that, but for posterity, so that other young designers might read it and recognize the warning signs, protect themselves better than I had the first time around. The book came out a year later. Stolen Stitches, The Dark Side of Fashion Success. My chapter was titled, The Sister Who Took Everything. It became a bestseller. There were podcast adaptations, a documentary in development. Vanessa's name became synonymous with design theft in the industry. Fashion schools used her case as a cautionary tale. I'd won completely, utterly, in every way possible. I had success, love, respect, legacy. Vanessa had nothing but infamy and regret. And yet, sometimes late at night, I'd think about that moment when I'd woken up on my 18th birthday, 10 years in the past, with the knowledge of everything to come. I'd think about the butterfly effect, about how my changes had rippled through time and created this new reality. I'd wonder if somewhere in another timeline, the original Mara had also gotten a second chance. If she was out there, living her best life, having learned the lessons I'd had to die to learn. I'd like to think she was. That both versions of me had found their happy endings, even if by vastly different paths. On my 30th birthday, my company went public. The IPO was massively successful, valuing my brand at over $200 million. I was officially a fashion mogul, one of the youngest self-made female CEOs in the industry. The press coverage was enormous. Every major outlet wanted interviews. They asked about my journey, my design philosophy, my plans for the future. Only one journalist was brave enough to ask about Vanessa. "Do you think your sister ever regretted what she did?" the reporter asked. I thought about it carefully. "I think she regrets getting caught," I finally said. "I don't think she regrets the theft itself." Narcissists rarely do. In her mind, she was always entitled to my work because she was the golden child, the chosen one. The idea that she had to create something on her own was foreign to her. "Do you think you'll ever reconcile?" "No," I said simply. "Some betrayals are unforgivable. She didn't just steal my designs. She stole my confidence, my opportunities, Years of my life. She tried to steal my entire identity. You don't come back from that. You don't get to say sorry and have everything be okay. But she's your sister. That made it worse, not better. She knew exactly how much damage she was doing, and she did it anyway because our mother told her it was okay. Because she thought she was more deserving than me. Blood doesn't entitle you to hurt people without consequences. The interview went viral. Survivors of familial abuse and creative theft from around the world reached out to thank me for speaking truth to the toxic idea that family always deserves forgiveness. I used the platform to expand my foundation's work, adding support for people dealing with toxic family members, not just design theft. We funded therapy, legal support, and career development for people who'd been sabotaged by their own relatives. It felt full circle. I'd taken my pain and turned it into purpose. I'd taken what Vanessa meant to destroy and built something that would outlast both of us. 5 years after my rebirth, I visited my father's grave for the first time since his death in this timeline. He'd passed away from cancer 2 years earlier, and I'd been too busy building my empire to properly grieve. I stood there looking at his headstone and told him everything. About my first life, about my death, about my second chance, about how I'd fought back and won, about how I wished he could have seen it. I did it, Dad, I whispered. I did it the right way. I worked hard, I stayed honest, and I won because I was better, not because I cheated. You would have been proud. The wind rustled through the trees, and I chose to believe it was his answer. I was 33 when I got a final message from Vanessa. Not directly. She sent it through a mutual acquaintance from high school, someone neutral who'd somehow stayed in touch with both of us. She wanted me to tell you that she finally understands what she did was wrong, the acquaintance said. She's been in therapy for years, and she's working on herself. She doesn't expect forgiveness, but she wanted you to know that she acknowledges the harm she caused. I considered this for a long moment. Tell her I appreciate the acknowledgement, I finally said. And I hope she finds peace. But tell her that peace will have to be separate from me. My life is better without her in it. She thought you might say that. She also asked me to tell you, she's genuinely proud of what you've built. She said your work is beautiful and she wishes she'd been able to celebrate it instead of trying to steal it. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. Now she says that, when it doesn't matter anymore. Is there anything you want me to tell her? I thought about all the things I could say, all the anger and hurt and triumph I could throw in her face. But in the end, I chose simplicity. Tell her I hope she finds something that's genuinely hers. And tell her that I've stopped thinking about her years ago. It was the truth. Vanessa had been such a huge part of my consciousness in my first life and the early years of my rebirth. But now, she was barely a footnote. My life was too full of good things to waste energy on old grudges. I had Marcus, who loved me unconditionally. I had friends who appreciated me. I had a company that employed hundreds of people. I had a foundation that protected vulnerable designers. I had a legacy that would outlast me. What did Vanessa have? Regret and mental illness and a retail job in Phoenix. She'd tried to steal my life and ended up with nothing of her own. That was punishment enough. On my 35th birthday, 7 years after my rebirth, 17 years after my first 18th birthday, I stood on a stage accepting the CFDA Designer of the Year award. It was the highest honor in American fashion, and I'd earned it entirely on my own merits. In my acceptance speech, I talked about perseverance, originality, and the importance of protecting creative work. I thanked my team, my husband, my friends. I thanked my father, who'd always believed in my talent even when no one else did. I didn't mention Vanessa or Mom. They didn't deserve space in my moment of triumph. After the ceremony, a young designer approached me, nervous and starstruck. "Miss Reeves," she said, "I just want to thank you. I read your story and it gave me the courage to report my roommate who was stealing my designs. Your foundation helped me build a case and I won. I just got my first legitimate commission, and it's because you inspired me to fight back." I hugged her, this stranger who represented everything I'd hoped to accomplish. "Don't thank me," I said. "You did the hard work. You fought for yourself. I just provided the tools." "But you showed us it was possible," she insisted. "You proved that talent and hard work actually matter, that cheaters don't always win." You're a hero to so many of us. A hero, me. The girl who'd been so broken, she'd taken her own life. The girl who'd needed a supernatural do-over just to get it right. But I'd done it. I'd taken that second chance and built something worth building. I'd turned my trauma into triumph, my pain into purpose. That night, lying in bed next to Marcus, I thought about the alternate Mara, the one who died at 28, alone and defeated. I thought about how she'd felt in those final moments, hopeless and broken, believing she'd never be good enough. I did it, I whispered into the darkness. I beat her. I beat them all. And I became something better than they ever imagined I could be. Marcus stirred beside me. What was that? Nothing, I said, smiling. Just talking to an old friend. I closed my eyes and slept peacefully, dreaming of new designs and future victories. The past was dead. The girl I'd been was gone. The woman I'd become was unstoppable. Vanessa had tried to copy my style after Rebirth, desperate to maintain her parasitic existence. But I'd dressed down, changed tactics, cut her off from her supply. And in doing so, I'd revealed the truth everyone needed to see. Without my talent to steal, she was nothing. She'd looked desperate because she was desperate. She'd always been desperate, always been empty, always been nothing more than a reflection of someone else's light. And me? I was the sun. Original, brilliant, impossible to copy, burning bright enough to cast her permanently into shadow. That was my revenge. Not destruction, though she'd certainly been destroyed. My revenge was simply existing, thriving, succeeding without her. My revenge was proving that I'd never needed her or Mom or any of them. That I'd always been enough on my own, I'd just needed to believe it. And sometimes, apparently, you need to die and come back to learn that lesson. But I'd learned it, and I'd built a whole new life on that knowledge. This was my story now, mine alone. Original, authentic, and impossible to steal. And I was never, ever giving it up again.